Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. Right, let's see if I can get this right this time, shall we? It should be easy. Your name's written on the... So let me introduce you to Daniel Morgan, who writes as Morgan Greene.
That is
And he's going to tell you about Angel Maker and Jamie Johansson and everything. Go for it. Introduce yourself properly.
Hi guys. My name is Daniel Morgan. I write under the pen name Morgan Greene. I started writing crime last year. Brought out a couple of kind of tentative sort of crime novels with Jamie at the head as a young sort of detective sergeant set in London. I was kind of sort of building up to this story and took the leap and finally kind of took it back to her roots to tackle a big kind of high-profile case, I suppose, that really sort of feels a bit more like the classic kind of high-stakes, crime thriller, I suppose, and it's got some sort of Scandi influence in there. It's sort of very character-driven as well. I guess it's it's a story that I wanted to write sort of since I sort of started kind of doing crime. It's the one that I wanted to start with, but I didn't feel like I was quite sort of there yet. So I kind of bided my time, built up the story, and sort of struck while the iron was warm, I suppose. I don't think we've given some of the best ideas, I think, but yeah.
Did I get Jamie's name right? Is it Johansson or is it Johansson?
Well, I suppose if you're a native Swede, she would be Jamie Johansson. Her father would be Jorgen Johansson, but Johansson's fine. You're like Scarlett, I suppose. That's the kind of the British version of it. So it's her mum was English in the books and her father's Swedish. So I suppose, she's Johansson for all intents and purposes. Yeah.
Just having a little look because we've already got people commenting. So, Singleton is hi Joe. He's looking at it's not coming up on my phone yet. That's on an earlier post, so I have to wait for it to come up because I can't see everybody's names at the side. You see, so
some questions coming in
already. Yeah, it goes flying. So Facebook user. That's who I was trying to figure out who it is.
I think Facebook user is Joe because I think he used that turn of phrase in the review as well. So I'm going to take a punt there and say that's either Joe or somebody that read his review and then stole that turn of phrase.
Well, Joe's got he's going to try and be with us for a while, and somebody said Jamie Johansson is amazing. Okay. Hello, Sam, and the man with two names. Somebody's told me to stop blushing. I know I'm a bit red. I'm absolutely boiling. 1 minute I'm freezing, the next minute I'm boiling. There's no can't win today.
No, well, it's the UK winter, isn't it? I mean, it's below freezing, there's 10 degrees, and it's below freezing, there's 10 degrees. I mean, it doesn't know what it wants to do.
I'd love to blame it on the winter. I think I'm just... It's fair enough. It's what it is. Somebody has written, Morgan churns out books like a machine gun spits out bullets. How does he write so fast? That is, I mean, it is Joe. Hi, Joe. Hi. He said, well done, it is me.
So, yeah, I mean...
How do you write so fast?
I mean, I don't really think that I do. I suppose it's just habit now. I mean, I worked... when I was in university, I was kind of working as a copywriter all through university, and I was kind of writing novels as well at the same time. And I don't know, I kind of just fell into a habit of always kind of, whenever I sit down at the computer to write, I always try and do kind of, a few thousand words, and I always kind of try and hit the kind of 3,000 word mark usually is where I kind of always feel like I've done a good chunk, and I tend to write in and not in a formulaic way, but I tend to write in a kind of a 3-act structure, and there's so many chapters in each, kind of act, and every chapter has 3,000 words, and I kind of adopted that back when I was writing pulp sci-fi with an independent publisher last year, which is why my name is sort of taken, because I was using my name doing that. Yeah. But that was a book a month that I had to deliver, and that had to be kind of 75,000 words. So it was 3 25,000 word acts, and it was chapters of 3,000 words, and there was always kind of 8 chapters. So every book had I can't even do maths, 24 chapters or so, 25 chapters maybe. Each one was around 3,000 words, and wow. I just found that was a really good
really
way.
Worked for you.
Yeah, just to keep track of kind of my progress and things, and I'd always know then that where my deadlines were going to be and things, and it would just allow me to kind of manage my time in a way that just sort of, felt natural, and that I didn't have to keep track of specific words or specific deadlines. I always just sit down, 3,000 words every day, Monday to Friday, 15,000 words a week, and that would just allow me to sort of keep on course with the pace. And I think just once you get into that habit and you know don't let yourself experience writer's block, because I think that's the big hurdle as well that a lot of writers face, is that
Mm.
you've got to sit down and feel inspired to create something sort of truly great. But I'm more of a fan of getting it down, and I often find that it's like trying to move a big stone sometimes, that it doesn't really matter how good that first few chapters or few 1,000 words is or whatever, but once you start to kind of get into that rhythm and you get that kind of that bullet out of the chamber and you're kind of away to go, I always find then it's just much easier to get into that flow. And you're going to be going back through it in editing anyway. So I mean, if you read back through something and you're just like, that's terrible, you just cut it out and you just go and you rewrite it. And that's kind of where I'm at really with my creative process, is that I just try and get everything down and then just try and sort it out later. So I suppose it's just a mix of habit and practice, and I don't know, a necessity to write all the time as well. I think that's just kind of what fuels it from behind. So it's
But
yeah,
you don't write full time though, do you? So
no,
that's a lot of words to fit in for somebody with a day job, as it were.
yeah. Well, I'm quite lucky that I work kind of from home as a copywriter.
Mm,
So as if I hadn't ever had enough of writing, with my kind of hobby, I had to do it for my job as well. So it's
mm,
so that's kind of mostly just nonfiction and boring, kind of product descriptions and that kind of stuff. But I tend to do that in the morning, so 9 until 1, sort of 5 days a week. I'll do that, and then
mm.
in the afternoons, then I try and leave that free for kind of writing. So I'll take a nice lunch and just kind of get my head square, and then sit back in the afternoon and just allow myself that kind of 4 or 5 hours then to just be free to write as much as I can really. And it's yeah, I always find it's better to be writing ahead of the deadline and writing ahead of schedule, and then have that
Mm.
time to go back and feel like you've got time to go back and edit and polish when something's not quite perfect, rather than saying, I don't know how to write this today, and then doing it tomorrow. And then if you keep experiencing that,
Yeah.
suddenly a week is gone and you're like, oh, well, I have to do twice as many words this week. And once you back yourself into a corner, that is a surefire way then to kind of degrade the quality, I find, of my own writing personally. Some people write really well like that. I don't. I need to, I need
Yeah,
to
it
get.
can't be any fun playing catch up all the time.
No, no. Especially, especially when you kind of, if you're just writing for yourself, then that's one thing. But
Mm,
for example, now I've got the sequel to Angel Maker up now for pre-order, and already I'm starting to see pre-orders come in, and people really, they're looking forward to reading that book, and I'm looking forward to writing it. I'm still, I'm in the process of writing it, but I've got people, waiting to read that book. So the last thing I want to do is leave that until the last minute and then be kind of just throwing words down, because those people, those readers, they're there to experience, hopefully something that's going to be a really good book. And I don't feel like I would be doing them a service if I was leaving it until a week before to try and get as much down as I could and just finish something. It's important to me to try and always, balance that kind of that speed of writing with uh, a minimum kind of quality level as well. And I think that the rigor and the schedule of trying to write a certain amount every day really allows you some breathing room, hopefully.
I think it's incredible, the structure and the routine that you manage to stick to. But obviously, it's like you said, it's that muscle memory, isn't it? It's building that habit.
And it's and I think once because often sometimes I get kind of people that I was in uni with or in college with who kind of keep up with me on LinkedIn or on Facebook, and they kind of message
Mm,
and they say things like, oh, I'm thinking about writing my first novel, or I'm starting to write this, so have you got any advice? And my advice is always the same: it's just practice. So get into that routine. Don't allow yourself the option of not writing something when you could be writing, because even if it's crap, it's practice. And there's a I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, especially, kind of view writing as an innate ability that some people have and other people don't. And I think some people are definitely naturally talented at it, and there are lots of stories of people who've never written a novel, then they write their first novel, and it's amazing. We see that a lot with Grindstone, but which is the company that I sort of run that hosts literary competitions, and we get lots of entries and we read them, and it's great, that some people have that ability. But for me, for example, I didn't. I was, my early stuff is god awful, it's terrible, but it's like, this is, I don't know, fourth book in this series that I've published. Then there was the 7 kind of sci-fi novels before that. But behind that, there's 15 novels that I wrote that just never went anywhere. And when I look back and I reread those, I'm like, yeah, no wonder they didn't sort of pan out, because they were terrible. And I have to, kind of get through all that and do that practice and put that time and put those hours in, and slowly develop a style to get to the point that I feel like I am now. And I still feel like I've got a lot to learn. I reread Bearskin, which was only 7 months ago, and I think, if I had that to do now, I'd do it differently. So it's always my advice is to just never allow yourself the luxury of not writing, and kind of taking that time away. It's always important just to keep pushing forward, I think, and practicing.
I do think I find if I feel a bit blocked with whatever I'm working on, I know I've made a mistake somewhere, and I know it's a big mistake, and my brain won't let me on until I read back and figure out where I've gone wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about writing, is that everybody has such a personal process towards it. And I know a lot of people that need to, writers that need to just ruminate, and sit and they need to think about something and write everything down and plot it all out and post-it notes, and everybody has their own process. And for me, it's very kind of word vomity, I suppose. It's just like, get it all down and then sort it all out once it's on the page, and go from there. And and never be afraid to kind of lose entire paragraphs, pages. Sometimes I write a chapter, and then on the edit, I'm like, that could be a page, and then just discard it and rewrite it. And that's how you've got to. For me, that's just sort of how it works for me, I guess.
So when it comes to characters and titles, so character names and titles, so I love the title of Angel Maker. I absolutely love it. It's brilliant. It's really just kind of catches your attention straight away. I thought that was great. But did that your original title, or have character names changed throughout?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, I tend to just I studied poetry in uni, and I carry a couple of kind of pointers with me. The gentleman who's taken the lecture of the course, he was very, very talented as a poet, and he said that you can never tell how something sounds when you read it in your head. You have to read something out loud to know how it sounds to other people. And I always do that with names as well. And I kind of, it's the reason that comic books use alliterative names, because they're much easier to remember, because your brain just latches onto them. It becomes kind of like almost like a mnemonic device, and I tend to do that. And especially with, kind of more difficult names like the Scandi names, I drifted towards that, a lot. And there's not just kind of perfectly alliterative, but kind of what they call assonantal or consonantal, where you have repetitive kind of assonantal sounds like A, E, I, O, U. So like Jan Hansen, for example, is, J and a H, but because they've got the 2 A sounds, that kind of, that lodges in your brain, it's easier to latch onto. So I always try and, whenever I'm thinking of something that I want people to remember, I always try and apply those kind of small poetic kind of devices, I suppose, to try and make things lodge in people's kind of minds, I suppose. And as well, I don't know if it's just me, because I'm a huge nerd, but I like to think that, there are kind of contextual weight to things that people pick up on subconsciously. So like, so Jamie Johansson, for example, she has an alliterative name. And when you think of alliterative names, you think of superheroes. So for me, in my head, it's like, is Jamie Johansson like Peter Parker, or, like a kind of, is she a superhero, and because she is a hero in her story, and then, when it comes to like Anders Wick, for example, Wick is kind of Vic is, a very kind of sharp name. It's like, Wick, it's a kind of a line in the sand, and that's the kind of person that he is as well. So I always like to try and create names that are memorable, but also ones that suit the characters that they're kind of, for, and I hope that kind of, comes through in it. And it's not a conscious thing that people will pick up on and think about, but hopefully it's, it's something that all contributes towards the grand feeling. So
Amira Kell-Provost wants to know what authors inspire you.
I read very broadly. My first kind of dalliance with crime and thriller was with a gentleman called Robert Cray, who wrote kind of the Elvis Cole and the Joe Pike series, and it's about a private detective um, in LA, and he writes in the same way that I do, which is called third person free and direct, where basically it just means you have the narrator's voice that mimics the main character's sort of internal voice. So you don't, because in my book I don't italicize kind of text for thought, because you're always in Jamie's sort of, you're looking over her shoulder really, and you only ever get the story from her point of view. And he writes in that way, and for some reason, and I only realized it last week when I was looking back and I started to reread one of the books, and I was like, he writes like this. This is probably why I write like this, because they were the books that I kind of read, religiously when I was a sort of a teen, and I think that's just kind of stuck with me. So I'd say he's probably my biggest influence in terms of crime, and then otherwise, Blake Crouch probably is just in terms of pure kind of like how to make somebody pick up a book and then not put it down again. That man has just got that like down to a T. So I lift from his style as well, with the short sort of sentences that you can't get away from. When you're reading, you just have to cascade down the page, because it's just bang, 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 bang. And I really love the way that he plays with pace. And he's one of those authors I'll have to carve out a day or a couple of hours to read him, because I can't just read one chapter. I've got to keep going. So I'd say probably those two biggest influences currently.
Sarah Mackenzie. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's one of our admins, for anyone who doesn't know. Do you know where the character of Jamie is going to go next, and how far ahead have you planned?
Yes, I do. So if you've read the blurb for Rising Tide, Jamie's going to be called out to investigate a murder on a remote oil drilling platform in the Norwegian Sea. And it's going to be a very classic kind of what they call closed circle mystery, where you've got a set sort of number of suspects. Everybody's got motive, and I think somebody. There's been a couple kind of recently. I think it's is it Lucy Foley? God, I'm going to forget the name of this now. It was a big book anyway last year, but about people getting together on an island for a marriage. Oh, somebody must know the name of this. I gave it to my dad for Christmas, and I've completely blanked on the name. But anyway, it's that.
I've blanked on the name. I've not read it. The
guest list.
Thank you. There we go.
That's it, yeah, perfect. Lucy, if you're watching, I'm really sorry. My dad did it really good, so you've got that going for you. And he's very difficult to please. He doesn't like my book, so no. Oh no, he does. He's very nice. He said, "Oh, they're good. You're getting better." And then he finishes it with the classic line, "I should probably write a novel." So it's but what can you do? He's all right. He's good.
So how far ahead do you know what's going to happen next? Do you have an idea of the direction you're going to take Jamie in, or are you not really sure yet?
I like to kind of stay light on my feet, and I think I've got a kind of a quartet in mind currently. So it's going to be Rising Tide, and then I'm toying with the name Blood Mountain. Then for number 3, which is probably going to be kind of set more in the summer, and I like to write in kind of quick succession. So this one takes place now, say 2 months after Angelmaker. So Jamie's kind of stayed in Stockholm. She's on official loan now. She's just kind of settling in. She's sort of sold in through her father's affairs. And for everybody who's read the book, what happens in the epilogue. And she's just starting to kind of like get into that process. And that's kind of what precipitates this next book. So it's a kind of one of the driving factors that kind of pushes Jamie into this case and gets her moving. So, and then I think the third book then is going to jump forward another couple of months. So, and that one will be in the summer. And then number 4 then will be the case that started in the epilogue will come full circle, and that will be the kind of main focus of book 4, which will end the kind of year, I hope, that will see Jamie kind of go from returning to her home to finally kind of gaining closure over what happened. And I hope that will feel then like a complete sort of set of books. And then probably after that, then I'll jump forward in time again to another sort of quick succession of stories, because I really like that sense of continuity where you can put down one book and then pick up another book and have it feel like the next episode of a kind of TV show or something. That's kind of what I want the books to feel like sometimes, is that episodic kind of structure. So
I like that idea. I really like that idea. It sounds well, yeah, it's exactly what you say. If you're watching something on Netflix and you're always excited that the next series is already there,
yeah,
that
it's
kind of vibe.
so
Yeah.
my dad actually told me last year when I was writing. He said, "Oh, do you read a lot of James Patterson?" I said, "No," and he said, "Oh, he does this kind of, well, was it James Patterson? It might be somebody." But basically, he said that the last chapter is always the start of the next book. So as soon as you finish the book, you think, "Oh, well, now I've got to go out and buy another one and read it immediately." And I think that's what every writer wants, is for somebody to finish reading one book and then immediately go and pick up another one of theirs. And I'm always very, very touched and hugely kind of grateful when people take the time to write to me as well and say, like, I read one and then I just had to read 2 and 3 because the prequels are like that. They're back to back to back. So it's it's nice when people sort of enjoy that as well. So it's because we're all trying to do something slightly different. All
Yeah.
crime writers they have the formula. It's like, I've got my detective. They're special to me. They've got to face cases that are dark. They're horrible. They push them to their limit. We're all writing in the same country, in the same kind of vein. It's all murders. It's all serial killers, and it's just, how do you innovate within that? That very kind of enclosed sphere. And I think it's this. That's kind of something that I wanted to adopt, was to write that kind of very tight episodic structure and that very close perspective, because I've read a lot of other really great crime, but for me, that's the way that I like to write. And I wanted to bring not only the classic tropes of crime into my writing, but also bring what I like to read into my writing, because there's an old adage that if you don't love what you write, who else is gonna? So it's yeah. I feel like I'm rambling now. Do you want me to answer some of these questions?
No, it's fine. Joe Singleton says Daniel has a very distinctive writing style.
Mm-hmm.
Was this? Oh, we've just answered this. Was this influenced by anyone, or is it something that's come from practice? So you've really just realised that it's come from reading so much when you were younger.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think you kind of you develop your own. Like, I've written novels in first person. I've written in kind of third person direct. I've written in kind of kind of third person omniscient, where you can hear everybody's thoughts. And I've had books with different characters and different this and different that. And I just, for me, the thing that I love to read is kind of deep characterization, and that's what I want to create in my books, is to create people that are conflicted. And and I had some feedback from one of the early kind of advanced readers that said, I really didn't like Jamie and I really didn't like Wick when I picked the book up. And I really struggled to get to grips with them. But as it went on, they did start to kind of, I did start to warm to them, and by the end I did quite like them. And that's kind of, and I was really sort of chuffed with the fact that she didn't like them to begin with, because when Jamie turns up, she's really selfish, and the kind of little lines that I slip in, might sort of allude to that, where she just kind of starts thinking about the guy that she left in Scotland, and she's like, I haven't heard from him, and then she's like, well, I haven't texted him either, so does that make me like the bad guy? But she is like that, and Wick is very, he's very self-absorbed and she's very self-absorbed, but they kind of come to realize that actually they probably fill that gap in each other's life, that they sort of screaming out for. So it's really good, I think, because you don't meet anybody in real life or in books. Well, I mean, you do in books, you don't in real life, that you like everything about them. So I want my characters to be like that as well. I like my characters not to be fatally flawed, but just flawed in the way that humans are, and feel really, like you're real. And it's the reason that Jamie kind of screws up so much in the first 3 books, because she's just like trying to figure out what she's doing and who she is, but she's going off emotion quite a lot. And she comes to realize through those books that actually, like, acting on impulse and acting emotionally is what's sort of tripping her up and getting her into trouble. So not only do they kind of have these flaws that trip them up, but they also embark upon this kind of journey of self-reflection and building as well. And it's, I don't know whether I'm actually doing any of this successfully, but this is what I'm trying to do when I'm writing. So it's yeah. That's
We've got a question from Jack Probin. Jack's one of our author members, and he
Hello,
donated a
Jen.
story for our charity anthology. Get
So,
that right? Criminal Shorts as well. Hello, Jack. If you're not writing as a copywriter, do you not find sorry, if you're writing as a copywriter, do you not find you've run out of creative juices for fiction? Do you ever find that? Are you ever burnt out and you just need a bit of time?
yeah, I take kind of a week off. Doing once publication is done, I do take a week off, and I mean now I'm pretty burned out. This week has been a busy week in work, and I've been trying to get some words down for the new book, and I've just been tentatively doing so because I don't feel like it's my best work, and I don't really want to. I mean, like it's great to get the words down, but then I know that I'm going to be going back and kind of re-editing them. So I'm kind of trying to work out in my head the best way to sort of balance that because I want this book to start as well as I feel Angel Maker kind of did, and I it is easy to get burned out. I think you've just got to know yourself. I think for me is when my eyes are heavy and I'm looking at the screen and I'm writing things, and sometimes I'm like tapping away, and other times I'm like, yeah, let's write more. It's just I do feel that I get burned out sometimes, but also I like coming back to it. It's like if you've ever taken a week off drinking beer and you just drink nothing but water, that first sip of beer is such a kind of it's like, oh yes, welcome back kind of thing. And I find that with fiction sometimes as well, that it's almost, I feel like my hands are so tied when I'm writing nonfiction and kind of copywriting because it's just the same repetitive, boring stuff that when I finally get to sit down and write, fiction, it's like, okay, now the gloves are off and I can really stretch my legs. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess, in the sense that the copywriting charges me up to want to write, but also burns me out as well at the same time. So it's a bit of a kind of balancing act, and one I definitely like to see the scales tipped more towards the fiction in future. If I can sort of do better as a writer, then hopefully I can work less as not a writer or the other type of writer, the wrong type.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Um, Rebecca Miller says you keep your editor on her toes too.
Yeah, oh yes, I do, because I don't know the difference between an M and an N dash apparently. So it's I'm glad I had her because yeah. So it's I mean that's the other great thing as well is that you've got to put yourself. I had a great editor for Bearskin and Fresh Meat and the prequel trilogies. And I was working with a cover designer, but at the end of that trilogy, I felt like that was going to stagnate, and Bearskin didn't quite have the same resonance that I'd hoped that it had. So it was really time to kind of start fresh, and I was looking around for an editor for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was nothing against my previous editor, who I really respect her quality of work and her work ethic, and it was perfect. But I think I learned that I needed a different type of personality to work alongside, and when I found Rebecca, she's got a strong personality, one that can definitely kind of keep me in line, and that's kind of what I said to her when we spoke first. Is like I said, I'm going to write some weird stuff, and I'm going to do some really wrong stuff. So I said, don't be afraid to like cut out paragraphs, cut out lines, really tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I need somebody to sort of tell me when I'm getting too big for my boots, really. And I think she did it well. I mean, judging by the reviews that are coming in, I think that she did a really great job of that, because there was some real dross in that first manuscript that I sent her that I think she's responsible for getting rid of. So thank you for that, Rebecca.
We like Rebecca. Rebecca is like a little firecracker, like this ball of energy.
Yeah.
I don't know if we actually said hello. She came on briefly with Catherine Yaff a few days ago.
I did see.
Just actually, yeah, when you two bumped into each other on my computer. How bizarre was that?
It was very,
small world.
very strange. It is a very small world, I think. But
yeah, and Rebecca's coming for an interview in September, so
perfect. I'll tune in.
Can't wait.
We'll reverse.
So Tony Millington, hi Tony, wants to know, would you go back to those 15 books and look to publish them? So I was wondering this. So you've got 15 or so manuscripts in your drawer. Is there nothing from them that you can go forward with?
I mean, I'm in love with all of the stories, and there's actually, I did last year, before I put out any of the crime, I did kind of put out one of the dystopian novels. So I've got a dystopian trilogy that I'd already written, and there was going to be the fourth one that I was going to put out when it kind of top when the third one topped the bestsellers chart, I was going to start writing the fourth one. Then it would have been the right time, but the first one unfortunately fell very flat in its face because I wrote it when I was 20, I think, and it didn't kind of quite have the self-awareness that I hope that I write with now. And some people really liked it and really responded to the story, and other people, very, very rightly so, said like, this is very rough around the edges. I think it's a good story, but I don't think that it was anywhere near ready to be published. But I put that out there, and then I was going to edit and publish the second one, and I got about 3/4 of the way through editing that second one in the trilogy. And I just sort of was starting to read these reviews that were coming in for the first one, and I was just like, is this where I want to go? How much energy can I devote to this? Because you get to a point where you're kind of polishing something, and you're polishing and polishing and polishing, but then you just sort of polishing it away rather than making it better.
Right.
And it was into a point where I was reading what was an instrumental kind of part of the manuscript when I wrote it, and I was reading through it, and I was like, this makes no sense. I was like, there's a massive plot hole here that needs to be like rethought, and it's a kind of dystopian novel that toys with time travel and multiple kind of timelines, and I just wasn't a good enough writer to kind of embark upon that kind of grander project, I think, when I did. So while I do think there are good elements to that, I just think some of it is kind of beyond repair, and some of it was just kind of, I don't think it would ever be what I would kind of, not what I want to publish, because I do really like that story when I was 20, and it's very important to me, but I don't think that it could be repaired. I think that it would have to be rewritten from the ground up with the manuscript as an influence and as an inspiration, rather than trying to kind of rework those earlier pieces, because they're not a representation of where I'm at as a writer now. And I think a lot of the other manuscripts I've written as well, even more recent, like I've got a pseudo kind of crime novel that was the first sort of crime thing I ever wrote, which is set in Bolivia, actually, and it kind of follows a woman who works for the International Labour Organization, and she's dispatched to Bolivia to kind of assess a coffee plantation that's applied for fair trade status, and the owner is very, very kind of sleazy, and he's very connected to the underworld, and it turns out there's actually a massive front for a drug operation kind of thing, and she gets embroiled in this and held prisoner, and it's very kind of complex and kind of thing. And and I only wrote it a year before I did Bare Skin, but then, and I was looking at it and I thought, oh, maybe I can put this out under Morgan Greene because it kind of fits, and maybe while people are waiting for the next book, they might want to go and read it. But again, I went back and it was just kind of, okay, this is going to need rewriting, this is going to need serious work to get it to the point where it is. So at the moment, I just don't think I have any time or energy to do that, when I hope that the kind of Jamie Johansson series is picking up pace. But maybe when my creative juices are totally spent, when I'm 40, I can delve into my back catalogue and finally kind of take the time to clean those up and do something with them. But who knows? They'll it's tough to say. I think kind of progressing as a writer is as much about kind of accepting that what you've written is not where you're going to be in the future as a writer as well, and that sometimes it's better just to leave sleeping dogs lie and push on and kind of learn from what you've done rather than dwelling on it. Because I know a lot of writers will write a novel and then spend years pitching it and polishing it and refining it, and sometimes you can only improve a manuscript to a certain point, and then you're never going to get beyond that, and the only way you can continue to improve is to write something new sometimes. So it's they hold a really special place in my heart and in my development as a writer. But whether or not I'll ever get the chance to go back and bring them up to the standard that I hope that I can achieve and be myself in 10 years, I don't know. So it's who knows. So that was a very long answer that kind of waffled for ages and didn't really answer the question. So
It did answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
It did. Because Tony asked if you'd go back and look to publish them, and you've explained kind of what you would and what you wouldn't and how you'd go about it. That wasn't a long-winded answer.
Right. I think I kind of blacked out for a second, and sort of like when I stopped speaking, the world kind of came back into focus. I was like, oh, where am I?
Happens to me all the time. So Amira said thank you for answering her question before. Patricia Forsyth says hi. Hi, Pat.
Hello.
The Angel Maker is a very descriptive title, says Joe Singleton. As you get into the book, it brings a picture in your mind.
Mm.
Was that? It must have been. It must have been exactly what you were going for.
Yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a title that was very kind of does what it says on the tin, and I wanted it to be that because I wrote and I released Bearskin and kind of and in my mind I was kind of playing with Bearskin as a title for the first one, and I was like, oh, like it's like has that connotation with needles and heroin, which is a big kind of influence of that, of like, it's there's no protection, the skin is naked, the skin is like exposed and raw, that kind of thing, and that's the kind of thing I wanted to go for. But if you actually search Bearskin without my name attached to it on Amazon, you get a very, very popular erotic novel. And if you search for it in America, you actually get condoms coming up. So on reflection, so on
always type
reflection,
your name with it. Gotcha.
Yeah. So on reflection, I've had people saying that, it's a really good book, but the name makes no sense at all. And when it came to do Angel Maker, I was like, I'm going to do this one right. I'm going to call it something that like makes sense and that sounds like the name of a serial killer. And I played it a bit safer, but I just wanted something that had more curb appeal, really. And I think that when you read the blurb as well, and you get the title and the blurb together, I think that it kind of really does offer that kind of that immediate punch, that immediate curb appeal of, there's somebody out there who is making angels, and no matter where your brain goes with that and tries to envision how a serial killer could be making angels, it's something dark, no matter whether you can guess what it actually is or something kind of different. So that's what I wanted to get, and hopefully that's a good title. I mean, I'm not going to tell you some of the other.
I don't think it's playing it safe when the title is so spot on. Such an excellent title. I think that's kind of the thing that title that clicks, that people remember, that thing that makes them go, right, what, why, how? You need to, I need to know what goes on behind that title. I think it's just such an excellent title.
Good. Well, I'm really glad. Thank you for saying that. It's a very difficult thing to come up with a good title. So it's
especially one that's not been kind of done 1,000 times. So tricky.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of other angel makers and a couple of other idle hands and that kind of thing, and it's very difficult to come up with something completely realistic.
So Joe wants to know, if the books were ever made into a film or TV show, who would you want to play Jamie or Wick?
Oh,
you must think a lot about this.
I do, and I actually have, like, when I come up with characters and I describe them, I often will pull up a picture of the actor that I have in my mind, so I can accurately kind of describe what I'm looking at, because that's something I always, and people have said that my books are descriptive, and it's always because in my mind I try and write as though it's a series, or like a TV series or a movie. I want people to feel like they're in that kind of very visceral environment. So for me, I mean, I'm kind of torn because Jamie's changing. So I think Alicia Vikander would probably be a really good kind of cast for her.
Oh, I don't know who that is. I'm going to have to Google.
So she's not actually blonde, which is the difficult thing, because there are very few, kind of blonde, blue-eyed actresses.
Blonde can be thrown in though, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's I think Alicia Vikander would be good because she's actually Swedish herself as well. So she's half Swedish, half kind of English, or Swedish, but kind of schooled in England. So she would be a really good fit for it. And then the other guy that I want for it is, his name is, he's in Vikings. He plays. I should have looked all this up beforehand, really. But
I didn't give you any kind of heads up though as to what I was going to be asking, because I try not to if I can help it. You having a quick Google?
I am King Harold, Vikings actor.
Next time we get you on, we'll have a chat about some of these beforehand, and I'll have pictures ready to show people.
Yeah, hopefully so. He's played by Vikings actor Peter Franzen. is who I'd have for Wick.
Oh, I'm
So
so
I mean,
terrible with names and faces. I've no idea.
I can hold my my phone up if that's of use. If you want me to kind of like do this, but
Yeah.
it's
But I am
yeah.
shocking when it comes to putting names and faces together.
It's so this is Peter Franzen. I don't. Oh God, which way are we going? That way. No, I don't want to share that. But yeah, this is him anyway, who I kind of envisioned for Wick. So
Okay. I have
uh,
no idea, but
if you watch Vikings, I mean, you'd probably know him. I mean, he's very kind of, he's got a gruff voice, and he plays a bit of a kind of a hard character in that as well. And you know, and when I was watching Vikings, kind of last year, he was the kind of character that I sort of like looked at, and I thought, oh, that's a really interesting character who's kind of soft on the inside but very hard on the outside. You know, who's got a kind of a strong kind of emotional sort of undercurrent, but is very, very kind of hard on the outside, I guess. And you know, and it's we're writers of thieves. We just pick.
somebody's
Yes,
put a link.
I think that
Joe
is.
Singleton's had to run. He says goodbye. So,
Oh,
bye,
goodbye,
Joe.
tuning in.
Thank you for
Yes,
joining us.
Peter.
Okay, so it's
Peter.
Amira. Amira Kell Provost has a Wikipedia link to Peter Franzen.
He's a Finnish actor.
I'm
So
terrible with names and faces.
it's okay. Yeah, I think probably Jamie would be Alicia Vikander. She played Tomb Raider or Lara Croft in the latest Tomb Raider movie. She's married to Michael Fassbender. But she's good.
I've
She's
heard
small.
of Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could put him in a blonde wig. I'm sure he'd be pretty good. I mean, he's terrible in The Snowman, but I mean, now that he knows what he's doing, I suppose he'll be better. So sorry if anybody liked that movie. It was a really good book. Terrible movie. So
Which movie?
The Snowman. It was one of Joe Nesbo's.
No.
Joe Nesbo's big book.
I've obviously heard of Joe Nesbo's book, but no.
Yeah,
Not
no,
read it, not seen that, no.
it's okay.
I am literally within our member authors and have been for the last, I don't know, a while. That's where my reading list comes from. And Rebecca said it does feel very filmic. So
Yeah.
this is going back to Angel Maker.
I mean, I watch a lot of TV. I find I get very fatigued with kind of words and with books as well, because I'm reading a lot through the day when I'm doing copywriting. It's always really boring stuff like technical manuals and product manuals and web pages and that kind of thing. So sometimes it's nice just to kind of sit down and just kind of have a bit of
Let your
passive.
brain go, yeah.
Yeah. So I watch a lot of TV and a lot of kind of crime stuff, and I take, I'm a big kind of film nerd, and I really like sort of set pieces and things, and I really appreciate movies that have really good cinematography. And the one that always comes to mind is The Revenant, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. I don't know if you've seen that.
Not seen it. I've heard of it. My son's a big Leo fan.
It's beautifully shot, and it's very kind of tight and gritty in sort of moments, and very fast paced and very kind of rich and dynamic and action packed. And then other times, then it's very slow and it takes a step back, and it's these big wide panning shots in Alaska and Canada that are just beautiful. And I really enjoy the way that kind of movies like that and series ebb and flow, and they kind of dive into the action and you're swept up, and it's a couple of chapters of woof, like can't catch your breath, and then sorry, that was a really weird noise. And then it just kind of step back then and sort of gives you those slow moments of reflection where kind of there's stillness and there's no movement, and Jamie and Wick are either sitting in a car talking, or it's just like a description of a still street or a still forest or something, and it gives the reader then time to kind of really situate themselves and feel like they know where they are, and take in that kind of ambience and build up that picture before you kind of get plunged into that sort of that kind of sweeping action again, hopefully. So it's somebody said, hey, I can't actually see the names in the Facebook users.
That's Donna Morfitt. Hi, Donna. She says, hey, Daniel.
Donna. Hello.
Sarah says, yes, love the follow-on feel. Will you stick with Jamie, or have you plans for a different detective?
I think Jamie she's got a couple of miles in her yet. I always kind of had the idea of writing a spin-off series with her father at the helm, and taking it back and writing kind of like an early kind of 90s or maybe kind of mid 80s set, sort of Swedish, in Stockholm with her father, but just kind of, I'm thinking kind of early 90s, where like Jamie's a young girl, and he's sort of, grappling with the onset of technology and a changing world, and becoming a father, and starting as a very kind of straight-laced and by the book sort of character, but then as the kind of cases get darker, he starts to lose his way, and much in the same way that kind of Jamie has, except she kind of holds her life together, or has rather built her life in a way to make sure that there's very little to come apart. But then you see his kind of implosion, where he goes down that same path of self-destruction that maybe she did, but he's got the family to lose, he's got the life to lose, and as well, lives in a different world where it is more brutal, it is kind of more gritty. There's no technology. There's it's more kind of that old school, detective kind of story, and maybe that's kind of on the cards if Jamie Johansson becomes big enough to kind of do a spin-off, and I kind of envision a character from the first trilogy as well having their own series. And I don't really want to ruin that. I mean, I don't know who's read it and who hasn't, but because I mean, it's a fate that's left open in that, and a character that kind of just disappears really from that kind of that early trilogy, and there's a reason that they or he, that person disappeared, and yeah, so maybe there's a story there, or maybe I'll just kind of go somewhere else and write something set in America. I think it's important to write what you know, but at the end of the day, I think as a writer, you're given the liberty to dream as large as you want, and it's like you can go anywhere. If Tolkien can write Middle Earth having never been there, then
exactly.
It's
can't think of a better way to put that. Sorry.
No.
Excuse me. Rebecca says, "Oh, that a spin-off with her dad would be brilliant. Those lost years where Jamie doesn't see him. Editor approved." Smiley face.
So the last years, okay, those brutal years where, well, I mean, I could do the original Angel Maker case. I mean, that's another option.
Oh,
but I mean, how that ends. So, I mean, yeah, I suppose you do.
I'm not quite there yet.
You have no, okay.
I've not finished. I'm not quite there. So,
well, I mean,
for anyone who's watching who hasn't even started yet, yeah, no spoilers, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you've read some of it, then you know that her father catches, who he believes to be the Angel Maker. So it's, so I mean, I could write that one, I suppose, or at least in passing. But I mean, it would be a good place to pick up. I think at the end of the day, I like to keep my options open, and when I start writing a book, I never plan more than a couple of scenes or a couple of chapters ahead, because I often find when the characters get there, they're in a different place than I expected them to be, or in a different frame of mind, or that when they come out of a scene, they're in a kind of an emotional or a mental state, and putting them into a pre-planned situation may not feel organic, and that's something I always want to do as well, as make sure that characters say things that they would say in real life, or behave in ways that they behave in real life, and not just kind of do the detective thing or do the expected thing, but actually have an emotional texture to them that kind of drives them beyond their as a detective he must do this next kind of thing.
We've got I feel like, Donna, you are setting me up for something here. Sam, if you want a different question, ask Daniel about Veets.
No, don't ask me about Veet.
Dear Lord, we're pre-watershed.
We are. I mean, tune back in, guys, at midnight, and we will discuss Veet. But at 7 p.m. or at 10 to 8, we'll. I think we'll gloss over that one quickly, and just leave it as a subject that Donna and I kind of broached very organically, but very strangely, and it'll always hold a dear place in my heart.
Just making me think of a review that I read for Veet years ago that I would not.
Yeah, well,
it was just a review that was doing the rounds at the time. So
you're very much in the same ballpark to what we were discussing, but I'd rather cut this here before it goes any further, because once we
absolutely
in that brain.
Let's have a go at. Let's not have a go at my Welsh accents. Amanda McCarthy says, he's Welsh, and then can you see it at the side?
Yeah, Diane.
There we go.
Jamai.
So glad you said that. This Mancunian mouth is no good at accents. Honestly, terrible. Absolutely terrible.
I'll let you off on that one. Not even anybody from Wales can speak Welsh, so it's I don't expect anybody from England to know how to speak it either. So it's yeah. I mean, most of us are confused by our own signs. I mean, they insist on writing everything on the ground in Welsh, and it's very difficult to read any of it. So yeah.
We've only got just over 5 minutes left. Donna's not letting up. He
No,
will tell you, see, it was a real conversation. I believe you, Donna.
it
I
was.
absolutely believe you. But I'm telling you, she's trying to get me into trouble. Oh, I absolutely dread to think. We've got about, just over 5 minutes left. So, do you want to start giving us a recap? Have you got the rest of your book covers with you to show off?
Yeah, somewhere. I think so.
Donna, you cheeky.
Oh, I've got the first two here. The third one is actually kind of the copies that I have
Oh,
with people.
okay.
So here's Bearskin. This one, not about it's not an erotica novel. It's not a packet of condoms. It's a crime thriller. But and then this is Fresh Meat. So the prequel trilogy, as it's going to be called, three kind of novels that really show how Jamie gets started as a real detective. She's a kind of a mid-30s detective sergeant in the London Met, and she's got a grouchy old kind of chain-smoking partner who is that kind of very stereotypical sort of alcoholic, hard drinking, detective kind of thing. And it's a story about how she kind of tries to keep him on the straight and narrow, and they get handed their first murder case, which is the murder of a young kind of homeless boy that nobody really wants to take notice of, and and it's that very much that kind of feeling of like, oh, who kind of cares about a homeless sort of person, and it kind of digs into that, and then they follow the trail and uncover some kind of grisly clues, and it gets kind of swept up then in a big sort of drug investigation, and Jamie's kind of very quickly out of her depth and has to kind of sink or swim, but she gets some assistance from a handsome doctor, and he's very friendly, and it's and it really sets Jamie down this path of kind of of chasing murderers, and then kind of we pick up then immediately afterwards in Fresh Meat, where Jamie is tasks herself really with kind of tracking down the killer of a kind of a migrant sex worker that's sort of not got any identification. She's a Jane Doe, but she was pregnant at the time she was shot, and the police that are the detectives who are investigating it just have no leads, and they're kind of letting the investigation just kind of die in the water. So she's very much on a crusade in that one to really catch the person who did it really, and make sure that the responsible pay. But again, she's just sort of out of her depth, and she's starting to tangle with kind of forces greater than herself, and kind of big crime really. And it's just a story of a young detective who's driven by the need to do right and to kind of serve justice. And in those books, what's different than Angel Maker is that she's actually guided by her father's voice basically, and he sort of almost appears to her as a kind of as a guardian kind of angel, really, and sort of guides her and tells her, and sort of you really get his advice that he gave to her about being a detective and that kind of thing, because there's a lot in Angel Maker where she's in work with him or she's kind of spending time with him, and a lot more of that advice comes through in the first three books really, and it's just her kind of her maturation as a detective really. I mean, there's a narrative kind of theory called Bildungsroman, which is just which is coming of age really, and is a kind of this transformation that happens in millions of books, and through these three books it charts her transformation from a detective who's never handled a murder to somebody who's been very much pushed to her limits of kind of physical limits, emotional limits, kind of mental limits as well. And as she comes into Angel Maker, she's a little bit more focused and a little bit more restrained, because she's been there, she's seen that, she's done it, and it was important for me, as I said right at the start, that she earned that. I wasn't ready to write Angel Maker, and I wasn't ready to kind of to put Jamie in Angel Maker, because I didn't feel like she'd earned that. I didn't feel like I knew her well enough as a character to really kind of challenge her with that kind of case and that kind of scope of case, and so they're a bit different. If you want to go back and read those, they're a bit more, I don't know, I suppose emotionally driven, a bit more kind of they're more of a reflection of Jamie as a younger, kind of more naive character, I guess. But hopefully they have their charm in some form. So.
Before we finish, I'd like to ask you my favourite question.
Okay.
And it is, what have been your most memorable moments as an author so far? I always get really different answers, so I love to ask.
I think as an author, just in general, I think the first big memorable moment was getting an email from the guy I was working with on the sci-fi novels, and he emailed me about a month after I started, or a month after the first book came out, and he said, "Oh, how's the second book going?" I said, "Oh, it was good." And he said, you know, people are like really kind of, you know, like excited for it. You know, I keep getting emails about it, and you know, the reviews are coming in. They're really, really good, and people are like signing up to the mailing list in a in greater numbers than they were before. Because there was a couple of other writers writing, and he said, "Oh, you know, like there's going to be a real sort of sort of uptick if we keep going like this." And he was like, "You happy about the second book?" He's like, "Because you know, there's a big expectation coming here, and he was like, "Oh, you know, I'll get your royalties check over to you, you know, next week." And I was just like, "Wait, you're gonna pay me for this? Like people are actually reading this and liking it?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, he was like, "People like this." He was like, "It's good." And I was like, "Oh, right," because I wrote like 15 novels before and they were all terrible. So it's like, and it was just this, I don't know, it's just a really weird sensation that you know, to kind of to have you know, somebody actually tell you after trying for years and years and years that, you know, people do like what you've written. And that was kind of the big moment for me, you know, 2 years ago. And then I think probably with Jamie Johansson was getting kind of some of the very early reviews through through a good kind of site called Book Sirens, where you just put the book up for free and advanced readers then can pick it up at their leisure, really from a slush pile, and read it. And you know, a couple of people who were named in the acknowledgements in the back of Angel Maker, they were so very positive and so very supportive about a book that they had no obligation to read, and to an author they had no obligation for. And you know, they took the time to read it and write, you know, some really lovely things that really put me in a mindset of, you know what, like I can do this. You know, I'm on my own now. I've you know, but you know, I want to see this through. And I think that was kind of a really formative sort of time for me, those first few weeks after Bare Skin came out, and I started seeing people sort of responding to it and to what I was doing. So it was yeah, because I mean, yeah, that's what we do it for as writers. You know, we don't do it for the fame. We do it for the readers. We do it to hear that people love what we've created. I think that's what all artists. You know, I'm not saying I'm an artist, but you know, in people who create things, you know, they want people to enjoy them. They want to bring enjoyment to people, and to hear that people are reading my work and it's stirring something in them or is doing something for them is such a meaningful thing for me, and I'm very, very grateful to be in a position where I can continue to pursue that.
And what a brilliant note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us,
My absolute
and
pleasure.
to everyone who's left any comments. And there's been so many questions and comments.
Mm.
Donna Morfitt would never tease me, honest. Loads of angel faces after it.
Well, anybody who's watching, if you want to put any more questions down in the comments of the video, I'm going to be lurking around the group for forever. So I'll be happy to kind of jump on and add those. Just make sure to tag me, and I'll answer any and all questions you have. And yeah, and hopefully we can do this at some point in the future if people are interested.
Well, Kaz gets you next time. We have a rule that we have to take turns and we both salt.
Perfect. Well, I've already said it to Donna. I'll say it here again. I'll be giving away a couple of copies of Angel Maker as well, signed copies. If anybody kind of wants to sort of enter the giveaway, I suppose. I don't know how many copies I'm going to have to give away, but a few. So yeah, I'll put a post up in a few days, probably saying how that can be entered, and then we'll yeah, the giveaway,
Brilliant.
I suppose. So yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for all the questions, guys, and I hope you enjoyed watching.